When a child is abused, getting help used to mean a long drive to an emergency room hours away. Star Child Advocacy Center works to make sure children can get that help right at home. When children are sent to Star, they talk to a forensic interviewer and a sexual abuse nurse examiner, or SANE nurse. Our Logan Rigamaw joins us live in the studio with how SANE nurses go the extra mile to bring peace of mind while caring for the victims. Good evening, Logan.
Thank you, Phyllis. Star Child Advocacy Center helps abused children and their non-offending caregivers by conducting forensic interviews and medical examinations. Law enforcement and Child Protective Services refer children to Star. While at the center, victims will see the SANE nurse for an examination. SANE nurse Amber Holbert says a medical exam at Star is different from a visit to an emergency room or the doctor.
So the exam itself differs here in that really I am collecting evidence after an assault or an abuse event, and then I'm also doing wellness checks and what we call a visual exam, where I am looking for residual injury.
Going to the doctor can be scary for children, even more so when they are being examined to find evidence of abuse. The examination room at Star features cartoon characters and has toys for kids to hold while they are with the nurse. The design is meant to put children at ease.
And so there's lots of colors, there's lots of distraction that help to simmer down the anxiety a good bit, because there are things for them to focus on that are not that rapid heart rate and their own internal feelings.
SANE nurses also check that children are in good health and refer them to specialists if needed. Holbert says this is to reassure the children and their non-offending caregivers that everything is okay.
So after an event where there's been some abuse or assault, in a child's mind and a caregiver's mind, there's always that question of, am I gonna be okay after this? Because there's almost an instant relief in any age group above like 3 or 4, where you can almost just see the relief, like, oh, okay, so there's nothing wrong. They need that. Everybody needs that.
Holbert says SANE nurses have not been in the Mid-Ohio Valley for very long. Across Wood, Pleasants, Ritchie, Worth, and Calhoun counties, there were no medical services available. Children would have to be taken to an emergency room 2 to 3 hours away for an exam.
But having these services here in our community, where we're accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nobody has to drive any great distance, we are able to get them here and be able to do what we need. But it's so very, very important. And this building is filled with people who show up for these children every single day. And we just have to keep showing up.
Star has taken the extra step to prevent child abuse from occurring. Shannon Chop says family advocates go to local schools to educate students and families about the different kinds of abuse and what constitutes abuse.
So we're trying to figure out if we can educate folks on what signs and things are ahead of time that might reduce what might happen later down the road. We often are able to get disclosures and receive reports that we might not have already had or gotten access to from those programs that they go into schools and teach.
Chop is an educator at Marietta College and a member of the Star board. One of her classes requires community service. Some of her students are connected to Star and experience what Star sees on a day-to-day basis.
If they are potentially interested in becoming, a pediatrician or something, I can connect them to Star so they can experience maybe some of the good, bad, and unfortunately the ugly in communities that they might want to be exposed to when they're are in their career field.
WTAP and the Grand Central Mall are hosting the Star Telethon on April 24th to help the organization raise money to continue their services. If you are interested in donating, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen. For more information about Star, you can visit our website at WTAP.com. That's all I have, Phyllis. Back to you.